Hey, I've had a few emails and I guess just general comments, and I thought it would be good to kind of post a video to kind of give a more tangible sense of what I'm talking about. The purpose of this video basically is to show a kind of a timeline, an evolution of where I began with game programming, how long it's taken me, when, what was my very first game that I completed and whatever. And part of it's to show that you start basic, and this is where I started, and these games aren't really on display. Some of them aren't, because they kind of suck, but, that's where you start at. Let's see. And also just to kind of give a feel for how long it takes. I've been busy with college since 2002, so it could possibly take other people a lot less long. So I basically get no programming done during the semester. And also just wanted to say, don't be discouraged with feeling like, oh my gosh, Pickin sticks is so hard, and how am I ever going to make an RPG or something? And you do have to work up. It will be difficult at first, even if you're feeling challenged by Pickin sticks. You'll ride it, you'll kind of learn how to do it, you'll learn character movement and collision. You might move on to a shoot 'em up, like a space shoot 'em up, and then you'll learn having multiple enemies and they shoot bullets. And if you just take it on a little bit at a time, it will be a lot more simple than you kind of look at it with a whole picture. And I know that gets overwhelming, and I know how that is. So the main point is to show, take baby steps. Start small. You can always build onto your projects. And I guess I'll just show you some of what I've been working on for the past 9 years. Also as a note, when I started programming, I was 12 and it was in Visual Basic, and I kind of don't count that part so much. I'll show those games, but I didn't learn very much about, I learned about if statements and maybe functions, but when I was 14 I started learning C++, and I didn't learn about Allegro until I was 16, so that's kind of when it started. That's kind of when my game started, and I started writing test programs like how do you use mouse, program for this. How do you do collision, program for this. How do you load from a film strip, program for this. And after a while I made a game, and as you'll see, it was a horrible game, so let's check it out.
So I don't really know what to say about my Visual Basic games. I didn't really learn very much when I was 12. I just kind of worked with what I did learn and made a few basic games. Nothing big. Alright, this game was pretty much my first. I had a really basic user interface with buttons, and I basically didn't make my own graphics. Those are from RPG Maker. And you don't have control over your attacking. It's just 4 people with their keyboard movements, and really annoying sound, and some bugs. Though, for the record, those character sprites weren't buggy when I first made it. I don't know what's wrong with that. Pickin sticks was made a month later or something, and it was even more basic, but it was basically just a game I made in the night for a former friend. And this is the game I say everyone should start with. It's really basic, just moving in collision and some, basic music, graphics, and keeping track of score. Nicola was a cute little game that I was just kind of playing with gameplay elements. The graphics are all stolen from Legend of Mana and Secret of Mana, I guess. But I was just pretty much experimenting. There was, I guess the last game, Pickin sticks, was made in January, this was made in May. As you can tell, I had, school. So that's why there was such a big delay, but not a whole lot more complex, just another top-down game with no physics. Just this one had some trig in it because of the angles, so. Sometimes it seems like a lot of my games are just done on a whim, and this one was just a gift for an online friend in December. I made in 1 or 2 days. But this is basically where I'd suggest starting off after Pickin sticks, is making a basic shoot 'em up, because it's basically just having enemies who shoot bullets every so often, and then you fly around and you shoot bullets also, so it's not that complex if you just make a basic one. This one was kind of crappy because everything was random and there was no map file, so think really kind of a big point in my game making was Shopping Mall, which was a gift game for my then boyfriend's like niece, or I guess that's what she was, some kid in the family, and she was really cute. But basically, this is where I started doing tiled maps, and I even had to write a map editor for that, which is Looseugo, which I recently renamed Loose Tiles, but it was kind of a crappy game, but it was kind of the beginning of something. I kind of figured out how to do collision and kind of region collision with players and the 4 tiles surrounding them and not the entire screen. And like I said, it was the beginning of my map maker, so I kind of figured out just on my own how to, it would be a 2D array, right? And maybe a number would represent a tile, and I'd make the map editor, and I kind of just figured a whole bunch of stuff out then in December of 2007, I suppose. The next thing I made was basically an Action 52 fan game. I had a platformer tutorial in Allegro out, and I basically used that code to make this. The problem was, though, nobody would play it because nobody apparently likes Action 52. What's wrong with you guys? But, they'd heard the music and they'd be like, no, I'm not playing your game, or they wouldn't want to play as non-human guy, even though my physics are a lot better than that. So I basically ended up just making original graphics and music for it and renaming it Linksion, and that was a little more popular. People liked that a little bit more than Action 52 fan game. So that's when I'm, June 2007, my first platformer. My next game was done for a competition, and I made it in about a month. A month was the deadline limit. And it's basically just Smash Brothers clone in NES style, and everything's original. So that one also, a little bit of platforming, some multiplayer. Not really a huge improvement, but it was a lot more polished. Then I had a class in the fall, and I decided I'd try to make an online game, which I've done some sockets and stuff before. Basically, Pickin Online Sticks was abandoned because there wasn't enough time in the semester. It was abandoned, and I made Rarinth instead, but as you can see, I had multi-threading working and some socket support. So after I scrapped that, I ended up making Rarinth in maybe 2 to 4 weeks in C++ for that class. And just another top-down game, tried to make it a little bit more complex, more polished. I had this running stat, I had different stats that level up, like HP and experience, and collect different things, and a little, floaty text, and it wasn't that complicated. You basically just make something with a tile map and movement, and then you add on to it and polish it up a little bit at a time. Shattered Wrath was an RPG that a team of us were making in software engineering. Basically, the class taught us how to plan out and write the documents and then work on... It basically didn't really teach us anything about code, so... the game itself didn't really get done. We were pressed for time. There were some bugs near the end that we didn't get to fix. As you can see, the battle system's just text, and a graphic on the side. But we did get a little bit done. Basically, we wanted to have more Lua scripting cutscenes that didn't get done. We wanted to have map warping that didn't get done. And I started recoding this game, because I learned about singletons. But I started recoding it, over late summer. But I never really got far enough by the time school picked up, so that's still incomplete. It hasn't been finished yet. So that's all the really notable things. I've played with 3D some, but I haven't had a whole lot of time. That's something I'll be trying to play with more after I graduate this spring. So, yay!